Today we'll be working in my workbook called The Final Ministry in Judea, which is from winter 29 AD to spring 30 AD. And we know exactly what period of time this covers because it covers from the Feast of Dedication clear to just before he arrives, just before Passion Week. So this is that period of time. We will be starting with chapter 3. Lazarus is raised from the dead. Last time we met, we had talked about Lazarus dying and the time it took, the delay that Jesus took in arriving in Bethany. And so now we're going to see part of the reason why he delayed. And so Lazarus is raised from the dead. John 20 to 44.
When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.
Jesus traveled on the road from Bethany beyond the Jordan through Jericho to Bethany in Judea. Mark the route he would have taken. In Bethany, they can see people coming up from Jericho. When Martha saw a crowd of people coming up the road, what did she do?
She went out to meet him.
Now, remember, it's a 2-day journey, so somewhere they're staying overnight between the two, which is probably where they are because they're still there when Mary comes. What does Martha complain to Jesus about?
If you had been here, my brother would not have died.
Does this mean that Martha knows that Jesus can heal the sick?
Yes.
Yet, based on our knowledge of time it took to travel, would Jesus have been able to get there in time?
No.
But we also know that Jesus healed some people without even being near them, such as when he healed the centurion servant and when he healed the Canaanite woman's daughter. Could he have healed Lazarus even though he was 20 miles away?
Yes. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection of the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world.
We can really see what Martha is feeling. I mean, at any funeral of a beloved family member who's Christian or a beloved person that is Christian, yes, we will see them again, but it's so long.
Yes.
It's like your brother will rise again. Well, yeah, I know that. I know I'm going to see him later, but why did he have to go now? Type thing is kind of where we're going with this. Here we see that Martha's faith was tested. Did she pass the test? What is your interpretation of the meaning of verse John 11:22? Do you think she's asking to have her brother brought back to life? Yet even Jesus has never done this after 4 days. What could her meaning be?
Yes, I know he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day.
Right. She asked, but I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. I don't think she's thinking that Lazarus can rise again. Nobody has done that after 4 days, even Jesus. But she says, I know that he will do whatever you ask him to do, whatever else you can do for me. What Jesus tells her is what we say about a Christian who dies. Go ahead and fill those out.
Your brother will rise again, just like
our deceased Christian brother or sister will rise again.
The one who believes in me will live even though they die.
That's a physical death.
Whoever lives by believing in me will never die.
Which is eternal death. So yeah, she's right where we would be when a loved one dies,
After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and is asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out. They followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there.
Yeah, when Martha goes back to the house and takes Mary aside to talk with her, what does she call Jesus?
Teacher.
The teacher here is capitalized. Remember, during this time, men were not taught, but Jesus taught the women as well. Where was Jesus when Mary came to see him?
At the place where Martha had met him.
Which most likely was where they stayed overnight. This is probably where the group stayed for the night, since it's 2 days travel from Bethabara to Bethany. Did Mary come alone, or was she with a group?
The Jews followed her.
Where did the Jews think Mary was going?
The tomb.
Why do you think the Jews, thinking Mary was going to the tomb, followed her?
Probably to comfort her.
Probably to comfort her, yes. Most likely, yes.
When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled.
So here's two different women saying exactly the same thing. Probably, Martha had said it to Mary, and Mary, that was the first thing Mary thought of when she saw Jesus, but saying it differently and with a different reaction to it. What did Mary do first before speaking to Jesus?
She fell at his feet.
How is this different than Martha when she came to Jesus?
Martha didn't fall to his feet.
Right. She was more accusatory. What emotion do we see from Mary and the Jews that come with her?
Weeping.
Yeah. Are the words Mary uses the same words as Martha used?
Yes.
More than likely, they had said these words to each other before Jesus came. How did Jesus react to Mary's emotional response?
He was deeply moved in spirit and troubled.
Every person reacts differently to a loss of a loved one. Jesus was not frustrated at Martha when she was angry at him for not being there, nor did he tell Mary to stop crying when she was so emotional about the loss of her brother. He responds to each with what they need to hear. Martha needed logic, Mary needed comfort. Why did Jesus not tell either woman not to be angry or sad because he was going to bring Lazarus back to life?
They needed to see it, not hear it.
That's a good answer. We don't know exactly why, but he doesn't, he knows what he can do, but it's based on what the God decides it can do too. So,
Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, See how he loved him? But some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?
so verse 35 is considered the shortest verse in the Bible. So if you had any trivia question as far as what's the shortest verse, it's verse 1135, Jesus wept. Now,
Wow.
an interesting thing is that he wept. He knows what's going to happen, and yet he wept. So he is emotionally caught up with his friends and how sad they are, and so this really shows that he is involved with our emotions now, even if he knows what's going to happen in the future with us, even if he knows whether we will survive or not survive, he is with us in present moment. And that's really cool. Now we come to the shortest verse of the Bible, John 11:35. But why did Jesus weep? Did Jesus already know that he would raise Lazarus from the dead?
Yes.
So he can't be weeping for Lazarus dying. Even if he wasn't going to raise Lazarus from the dead, Jesus knows where the soul of Lazarus would have gone, which is much more enjoyable than being here on earth. He isn't weeping for not being able to see Lazarus for a while, because Jesus will know that his own death is not more than a month away. So if he's not weeping for the death of Lazarus, then why do you think Jesus is weeping?
The pain Mary and Martha had.
Right. Even though he knows all things, Jesus still feels our pain, our sorrow, our anguish. Are there other people around the tomb other than Jesus, Mary, and probably Martha?
Yes.
Who are they?
Okay. John 11:16 is Thomas and the disciples. In John 11:19, it says it's Jews to comfort Mary at the tomb.
Right. What did the crowd question?
Why Jesus didn't save him when he uh, opened the eyes of the blind.
Yeah. We think this ourselves our time at times. Why does Jesus heal some people and not others? Um,
To show
why?
God's glory.
Right. The whole point of it is why he heals some people and not others. He's not looking at the immediate moment. He's looking at what will healing cause. You know, I think that, I think that I've never personally talked to Jesus and found out that, there's lots of people that need healing on all things, but why heal someone miraculously? And so you think, okay, why is that different than someone else? And it may be what comes from that. Is there someone else who looks at that and believes in Christ? Is there a whole group of people that looks at that and believes in Christ? Or is the death? Sometimes a person's death is what brings people to Christ, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I look at Nancy, who's fighting a disease that will take her life, and she is doing everything she can to do work with Christ. And isn't she a testimony to
Yeah.
anybody that knows her?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So, you know, he sees everything. He doesn't see the immediate situation.
Jesus once more, deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they took away the stone.
What did Jesus want someone to do when he came to the tomb?
Take away the stone.
Couldn't Jesus have rolled it away himself?
Yes.
So why ask others to do it?
For them to be involved.
Yes, for everybody to be a part of this. It isn't just him doing it. They are rolling away the stone. That takes an act of faith. We're not going to roll away the stone. Why? It's too odorous out there. No, they are rolling away the stone because they believe, even a mustard seed of belief. What is Martha's concern?
The bad odor.
Yeah. What did Jesus say to the disciples and the messenger when he first learned that Lazarus was sick? Go ahead and fill that in.
Okay. When he heard this, Jesus said, the sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it.
Did the Jewish men, even though being near the dead were considered unclean, do what Jesus asked?
Yes.
Why do you think?
To see what happens.
Yeah. He has a reputation. Let's see what happens.
Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Could you
Came out as a
imagine seeing
mummy.
that running out?
Yeah. We have a mummy in the Bible. Before Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead, who does he thank?
God.
Why does Jesus thank God out loud?
Benefit of the people standing
Right.
there.
And here again, we have that emphasis that Jesus and God, they work together. And Jesus still had God's permission, or they worked together as far as raising Lazarus from the dead. So it isn't just, he says, I thank you, you've heard me, that type of thing. Does Jesus call Lazarus by his name?
Yes.
There are some commentators that say if Jesus did not call Lazarus specifically, then every dead person in that tomb would come alive. That's true. It makes sense. Read 1 Thessalonians 4:16-17. How does Jesus call Christians up into the air?
God, mighty. Can't even read my writing. Mighty,
Shout,
mighty, shout. Oh yeah, shout. Mighty
voice of his
shout
archangel.
with the soul slurring slurring cry of archangel and the
Right,
great trumpet call of God.
right. Yep. Lazarus' movement would have been hindered by what?
Hands and feet wrapped with strip of linen and cloth around his face.
Actually, his movement would have been so hindered, you wonder how he made it to the door. His feet and body were wrapped like a mummy, and his face would have been covered with a cloth. What did Jesus have the people do after Lazarus came to the door of the tomb?
Take off the grave clothes and let him go.
Yeah. Think how Jesus had the people involved in the raising. Imagine if you believe strongly that Lazarus was dead and he has been in the tomb 4 days, and yet now he can talk, touch, see, and feel. What would you say? What would you do? Wouldn't you talk with him, touch him, see if he was decayed at all? Touching him made it real.
Yep.
So now we have the crossword. Hey, the shortest verse in the Bible is John 11:35, which says, Jesus.
Wept.
Number 5, Martha accused Jesus by saying, Lord, if you had been here, my
Brother.
would not have died. 8, who was the second who came to Jesus, Mary or Martha?
Mary.
9, Martha believes that Jesus is the
Messiah.
Son of God. 10, when Mary came to Jesus, she fell at his
Feet.
11, Martha was worried about the bad
Odor.
that would come from an open tomb. 12, Lazarus was wrapped in strips of
Linen.
Okay, cool. 2 down, the Jews who followed followed Mary, thought she was going to Lazarus's.
Tomb.
3, before Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, they had to roll away the.
Stone.
4, Martha affirmed what Jesus told her by saying he knew he would rise again in the
Resurrection.
day. 6, when Jesus came to Jesus, both she and the Jews with her were.
Weeping.
And 7, who was the first to come to Jesus, Mary or Martha?
Martha.
All righty. Cool. I'll see you on the next one, okay?
Okay.